for some Bengals news. At the Growler, we got you. Hot takes, interviews from your host, Paul Dangler Jr.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of the Growler. Paul Dehner Jr. here with our good friend, the chalkboards only, Charlie Goldsmith. What's going on, Charlie?
How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great. I'm not as good as you, because you're going to be heading to Arizona next week to go to your. Is Goodyear, Arizona, in your top 3 favorite places on earth?
I would say what it is more of a wheelhouse. Like I'm very much in my element in Goodyear, Arizona.
Backfield's Charlie doing your thing, grinding for the folks at Power Stacks, which big episode just dropped this week on about the Suarez signing. So everybody's all giddy about it's good vibes only everywhere in Reds country. Spring training around the corner. Suarez is in tow. Off we go into the season. If you or your business want to do some partner up with Stacks, with the Growler, a combination of the two, hit us up, the Growler Podcast at gmail.com. We're signing up for free agency, for draft, for spring training, for the season. We're doing it all. So we hope to hear from you soon. We got a lot we're going to get to today. We've got a little bit of news. It's really not newsy. Not a lot going on right now. But you got the Super Bowl happening. Mo is going to join. We're going to talk a little bit about, everybody does this. It's when you're watching the Super Bowl, and if you're with fellow fans of the team, of your team that's not in it, you turn and you say, we don't have that. We don't got that. Right. And there's always a Bengals conversation that's going to happen as you watch the Super Bowl. I'm going to ask Mo what his Bengals conversation will be this weekend when watching the Super Bowl, and we'll dive into that. Plus, he had to fire off some Hall of Fame thoughts, and I let him. So we have all of that coming your way. Charlie and I, we have something fun that we cooked up for you, though. And because, Charlie, we did the sheets last week, right? And that was it was deep. It was involved. We were going everywhere across the league, talking about Bengals players. Who do you want? But it focused on kind of the top levels. You like going deeper than that. You like diving in a little bit deeper. So we wanted to bring in an off the sheets exercise. And for that, Charlie, the wheel is back. I have a wheel.
You said fun. I'd say essential.
Essential. Critical. Look, do you want to fill out the roster or not? Okay. Don't spend all your time at the top of the sheets. We have taken 10 off the sheets players.
10 of your favorite Bengals.
10 of your favorite Bengals, maybe some not so favorite. And we have put them on the wheel, and we're going to spin it and fire off takes about them until we get sick of it. I don't know how long it's going to last, tell you the truth, but we're going to do it. And I'm excited for it. I'm going to call it the off the sheets spin class. I don't know. Had a ring to it. So I like that. That is coming after our conversation with Mo. So I know that all of you will be sticking around for that. Okay, let's kick it off here, Charlie, and talk a little bit about a bit of the news happening across the league. You have international games that are kind of being announced. Paris, 3 games. There's going to be 9 international games this year. Those will come out as we go on. Right now, I think we only know a couple. The Bengals not involved yet. There's a chance that they could be. Not a ton of other news coming out of the commissioner's press conference yesterday. Certainly not Bengals related. The news, one of the news bits of the week, though, was that the salary cap was announced, at least the range, up in the 301 to 305 million range for the season, which is a jump from where I think the league expected it to be, and the projections of the sheets, which have been adjusted. If you want to go back and adjust the sheets, it's about the over the cap had it at 295.5. But it kind of, Charlie, it brought up an interesting conversation. And do salary cap jumps get you excited?
Sure. Let's see. This will be the test case that I run with for the rest of my life.
Yeah. there's an interesting conversation to be had about what does this actually mean? Is this good for the Bengals? Is this bad for the Bengals? And I think it's whatever. It's not such a monumental difference that it's going to change plans. I think it opens up your ability to do a little bit more. But I got an email this weekend and was asking if we could explain a little bit more about cash spend versus cap spend. Now, we use cap on the sheets because that's the easiest way to predict what the Bengals do because they adhere to that, and we have a proven track record of it playing out to near that number. So we use it because it's the best to focus on what the Bengals will do, which is the point of that exercise. But yes, cash is more important than cap in the big picture. That's the real money that's being spent, not the cooking of the books. And people talk, well, how do the Bengals rank in that? And are there things they could be doing differently there? Are they not doing the most? I would say both. They're not doing the most that they could, but you'd argue that how much does that really matter? Last year, for instance, they were 22nd in cash spend. And this is the Spa Track. 2024, they were 13th. 2023, they were 12th. 2022, they were 30th. And in 2021, they were 22nd. And cash spend's great, but it's not necessarily correlative to winning. How many teams do you think that played in the Final Four, Charlie, were ranked in the bottom 4 in the league in cash spend this year?
The Patriots had a rookie quarterback, and the Broncos had a rookie quarterback. So I'm going to go with those two teams, a rookie quarterback contract.
It's actually the opposite because
Really?
they spent in free agency and spent money to fill that out. Denver was 5th. New England was 9th. The Rams were 29th and the Seahawks were 31st in cash spend. In 2024, 6 of the 7 lowest spending cash teams won double-digit games. And maybe the best Bengals team that we've seen in 2022 was 30th, as I just mentioned. And so I just think it's easy. I think it's really easy. We want to do this, right? We just want to be like, it's like baseball. You know this conversation. Dodgers, look at all the money they're spending. Look at the cash into the team. Did you go out and spend? Or are the Reds $10 million more finally, right? Like, it's a big deal. It's just the results. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be wanting to find ways to spend more cash on your team. The Bengals absolutely should. But in terms of year over year rankings, correlation to winning, that hasn't as much been it. It's so much more about how you use it, the effectiveness of the ways that you use it, and finding levers to pull that can give you some advantages.
To me, where it always gets most interesting is every year, does it end up being a year where the Bengals pull some unexpected levers? You know, your void years, different guaranteed structures with the second year. When they do something like that, that's what catches my attention more than anything compared to a cap cash difference discrepancy in the contract. But the beauty is, like you said, with the Bengals, because their predictability in terms of structure, 90% of the time, that makes the 10% kind of also tell you something about how they feel about the team.
Yeah. And how Burrow and Chase kind of live on an island, different than others, right? And it was kind of the messaging and actually doing some of that stuff in recent years. And they've tried to find ways, and we've seen void years pull up on this. And I think that's it. You know, I don't think the argument against them is that they're not trying to find, they need to diversify the stuff that they need to be willing to do more of that stuff in more situations, I think, is the argument. You've seen them do it, in very small moments with only the best players. I think there needs to be more swings where void years, guarantees, backloaded contracts instead of front-loaded contracts, understanding the rise in cap and pushing money out a little bit more is utilized to get them the one extra player or the two extra players. I remember when they were talking about Howie Roseman and the Eagles saying, well, what's the difference in doing your extensions as soon as possible versus waiting? And he's like, a player, a guard, like a starter. I mean, that's it. Is you can't be sacrificing starters just by, the method in which you choose to do business. And there's arguments to be made both ways. We've certainly heard the Bengals make them over the years in terms of why they do things the way they do. But I just think That's the biggest thing for me, is those levers that we see in the 10%. You'd like to see that in a much wider number, 25%, something like that. In years where you feel like it's there for you. And I would argue that this is one that's there for you. And we sort of have had the Burrow restructure conversation will be an interesting part of that. In the, how do they feel about this team? Is that something they would be willing to do, something they've never really done, in order to funnel more cap space, so to speak, into this year's team by spending cash? So that is certainly a conversation that we'll have, and we talked about that in recent episodes. So go back and listen to that. But I wanted to kind of flush that out a little bit since we had a conversation about it. Any last financial thoughts from you, Charlie?
You may disagree with this. We've had a version of this conversation before, but when you look at this financial stuff that I look at, maybe tiebreaker's a little weak, but there's something to the idea of being a tiebreaker. I look at the other potential tiebreaker, which is the Bengals pitch to a free agent, whether or not that free agent will believe the Bengals are ready to win a Super Bowl in 2026. It's something that we saw Orlando Brown, Mike Gesicki, Ted Karras, Hayden Hurst. Like, I could come up with some more if you gave me some more time as well. Guys who truly took less and put kind of their money where their mouth was from a contract structure standpoint, because they were in a great way chasing a ring. And do the Bengals still have that pitch? Does that pitch still work? And does that pitch impact the bottom line in a way that it really has in the past?
Yeah. I did something in the mailbag. I went through, and I know you as a spreadsheet guy, and Jay the same way, have probably done versions of this, but I keep sort of the outside free agents and inside extension numbers together, and it's interesting when you look at who they've paid, why they've paid, what those players look like, because we talked about that in free agency. And they have paid 6 outside free agents at least $8 million in average annual value since Zach Taylor showed up. And all of them outside of Trey Waynes, which is probably, only going to impact this more, we're on the line. We're defensive line, offensive line, Sheldon Rankins, Orlando Brown Jr., Alex Kappa, Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader, and Trey Waynes. That's the list. When they splurge, when they go over, they do go on the lines. Also, another thing that everybody has in common is they're all under 30. And we're going to have this discussion a lot this year, because there's really, and in fact, outside offensive line is the only one that they've ever been willing to do an internal extension or an outside free agent at all that's somebody 30 or older. That's it. The only position that they're willing to do that, and they've done it with Riley Reif and Trent Brown and Ted Karras extensions and stuff like that. Everybody else that they've paid, whether internal or external, $3 million average annual value or more, has been under 30 when they signed that contract. Everyone.
I remember we had this conversation last year as we both made the case why the Bengals should trade Trey Hendrickson. We talked about the idea of, let's just reset this whole thing, rebuild the entire defense, which, spoiler alert, they ended up doing. And that vision and that process doesn't necessarily sync up with how old's Trey, 30-year-old pass rusher on a 1-year deal, kind of an all-in move. And that all-in move didn't fit the real timeline of what the defense was. So to your point about signing guys over 30, I still look at this as a defense that's now in year 2 of a rebuild, but isn't at a tipping point all-in stage in terms of get me the guy who impacts winning the most in 2026 with future years, worry about that later. No, like I look at and value and want impact kind of in every year of that contract as someone who can grow with this defense, as opposed to just a 1-year come in, get your sacks and go home type of old guy.
I'm glad you mentioned Trey. I sort of didn't know how to count him because last year was like still under contract. I guess it was a raise, so it didn't technically qualify as like an extension. You could throw him in there as the exception to the rule, but certainly not when we look at guys like Demario Davis and Bobby Wagner. And
I'd look at it like he is the rule, because even though it just was an all-pro, they didn't give him a long-term contract.
Yes, right, exactly. That's as far as you would possibly go. Is literal second in the NFL in defensive player of the year. Didn't matter in terms of getting the long-term contract. You're right on that one. So anyway, just as we continue to go through that, just some food for thought. Other quick notes that I wanted to just touch on while we're here. What do we got here in news? You ever are you a Tabs guy, Charlie?
Not to the extreme. I have friends who are really problematic Tabs people, and I'm nowhere near as bad as them.
Yeah, I'm a problematic Tabs guy.
Oh, sorry. No offense.
No, it's okay. Because and this time of year especially, like I feel like in the season I do a good job of every week having the time where I clean it out, whether it's on Friday afternoon or Sunday morning while we're sitting around waiting for the game to start or whatever. Like that's my okay, I'm going to clean this out, restart the new week. In the off season, it's just, man, it's it's PFF, it's Spot Track, it's OTC, it's everything else. And I'm doing 4 or 5 different projects at once. I've got all these different stories that are long-term, short-term. And I just looking at the tabs are too small. I got too many. I get lost in here. I can't take it. And everybody has different views. Some people love being crazy Tabs people. I don't love it, but I'm willing to do it.
Can I give a criticism of a family member who I'll leave unnamed?
Please.
This family member used a lot of Word documents and Safari pages. Still uses Safari, by the way.
Hanging in there.
Just leaves them all open. So if you need to find something, you just have to sift through all of the individual pages, just one tab at a time, by the way, not going across the bar. They're each their own window.
Wow.
And then this person has not organized their desktop. So everything is in terms of files. So everything is just saved to the desktop. So if you need your resume, you have to you have to go on a Where's Waldo hunt for a desktop that's filled with saved files for the one that says resume. And I've tried to raise this problem with this family member, but it's gone nowhere.
You just fight the good fight. You do the best you can. You can only do so much. I have a 3 screen setup. So I have my main computer and 2 separate screens in front of me, each with a different, I have work email, personal email, Growler email, all of those in separate setups. And when those tabs all start ballooning at the same time, yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem.
Now, one more family member, I'll name this one. This is my dad. My dad takes it up an even another level because he doesn't have tabs open. He has papers. You open his car, there are just papers and newspapers and magazines and files and manila folders everywhere. So if you're taking the dog out of the car, you got to get the dog to not step on the papers and make sure the papers don't fly out the window. So you thought desktops and tabs were a problem. My dad's filing system, he won't like me mentioning this, but I do take aim and criticism of it as well.
Sure. And this is the forum to do so. I would say maybe if there's a birthday or any other holiday you want to celebrate, or just be a giver and have a gift. Maybe you go for the little container with the files and just that's something that can live in the back seat. Can just politely put all his papers in there and have them nice and organized. You don't have to worry about the dog situation.
I just like that there's a world where on this podcast right now, we're talking about the Bengals matching up against Mike McDonald's defense in the Super Bowl and how they're going to handle those simulated pressures. But because of what this season was, here we are on February 3rd talking about filing systems in our 7th offseason podcast of the year so far.
Incredibly representative of the state of the Bengals right now. So I had other stuff that we can get into. I don't find it all that interesting. It will be Senior Bowl will be interesting and something we'll talk about more. Dane Brugler has a great piece up on The Athletic now. If you want to go take a look at it in terms of some of the winners from that week, the main theme that I've heard from people coming out of there was thumbs up on the defensive line group, who had a big week in terms of a lot of edge guys, a lot of D-line, defensive tackles, where, and that's huge for the Bengals as they figure out what their approach is going to be. The idea of the 2nd round defensive lineman, the 3rd round defensive lineman, having depth there, having where you feel like you definitely can get one there. can certainly have impact in their strategy and their effectiveness in executing it over the course of this offseason with pass rush, which I do have a 3-part series that kicked off today on the pass rush and analyzing that. So make sure you go over to The Athletic for that as well while you're there hunting Dane stuff.
And especially in a class where the defensive tackle free agent class is so bad, that depth can really be important.
Yeah, part 3 is going to be sad for Bengals fans. I hate to break it to you. The defensive tackle scarcity is a tough one to read and was a tough one to write. But there's solutions. They're hard, but there's solutions out there to be had. Make sure you keep an eye out for that. Pro Bowl games are tonight. There are 2 receivers and 2 quarterbacks from the Bengals involved. How about that? The one thing I do want to address on this is people are like, how does Joe Burrow get in after Shedeur Sanders? Apparently Justin Fields was invited. I believe the proper term for Burrow, instead of him saying he's going to play, was begged. I believe he was begged probably by the league. Please, can you please come and save us? And, he has his boys there, so it probably wasn't that hard to do. This is not a process of going. If it was going in order of deserving, those calls were made, and there weren't announcements every time they got turned down. How about that? There's a reason it ended up where it ended up. I think just about every quarterback probably got a call. And, Burrow coming and hanging out with T and Jamar and Flacco was a little easier sell to come out for.
I'm surprised myself. I have 3 takes on the Pro Bowl.
Wow.
One, my theory is that Burrow just showed up and he goes, I'm here for the Pro Bowl. And they go, yes, you are. Come on in. Number 2, and I predicted this on Sunday night, you can ask Joe Danneman, before there was the clip the Bengals tweeted of Flacco wanting a route. On Sunday night, I predicted that one Joe would complete a pass to another Joe.
Ooh.
That I'll not be watching, but I'll probably see that clip when it circulates on social media. And then my third take is that, so like there's been all the media stuff, and apparently they've had, like, I don't want to call them practices the last 2 days, but they've had practices. Flacco was reading something off a card on one of the clips I saw. Notice that we did not see Joe Burrow there. So I like to imagine that, like, Burrow's going to win the MVP, and then he'll do some AI practice, like, monologue, because he doesn't do Pro Bowl practice. Talking about practice, and then he does something like that as he accepts the MVP trophy that Andy Dalton once won, I believe.
Oh, gosh. When the Pro Bowl MVP meant something. I remember more when Tyler Eifert got hurt there. That's what I remember most about the Pro Bowl. And he was like, okay, that's the end of the Pro Bowl for me. And it was sitting on my couch while everyone was in Hawaii, just being like, I don't have to do anything as long as no one gets hurt. And there was Tyler down with what turned out to be a truly debilitating injury. Great times. Okay. All right. Let's do this. Let's bring in Mo. And then we're on the flip side of that. Charlie and we're going to spin the wheel. Looking forward to that. All right. Here's Mo Egger. All right. Now let's bring in our good friend and yours from ESPN 1530, Mo Egger. Mo, how we doing?
Wonderful, Paul. How about yourself?
I am doing great. Good to see you on a weekend that delivered good news, for local team.
Yes.
Eugenio Suarez is here for the Reds, and the Bengals have 4 Pro Bowlers in their passing game. Unbelievable.
Duke Tobin going to have another press conference to talk more about Joe Flacco, the Pro Bowl quarterback that he traded for, huh?
Pat on the back time.
Yeah.
That is news. I am going to use this time, though, to talk about things that actually matter. And so I want to talk about the real game that's going to happen on Sunday, not in a who you got, but we can talk about who you got and what you like in the Super Bowl on Sunday. But I think Bengals fans do this, and every fan of their team does this if they're not in the Super Bowl. You sit there and you watch it, and you're holding your cold beverage, and you're eating the Skyline dip, and you turn to your buddy next to you and you go, "We don't have that. We screwed that one up." When people are sitting around on Sunday, you might be at a function like this. You've been known to watch a game or two in this manner. What will you be turning to your friends and saying in regards to the Bengals when you watch the Super Bowl on Sunday?
Well, I'm not going to be watching it with the nerdiest of people, but if I was, I would say, look at all those players the Patriots drafted last year who are playing in this game. And so, if we're going to do what lessons can the Bengals learn from these two teams, I think specifically with New England, there's been an awesome blend of luck. There's been an awesome blend of hiring the right coach, nailing it in free agency, and in recent years, nailing it in the draft. By the end of the regular season, every player they drafted was in uniform for the Patriots. Like Mr. Irrelevant played in a playoff game for the New England Patriots this year. So I guess from a New England perspective, there's three things, and then I'll tie one into Seattle. If you look at the arc of that franchise, you could see where the drafting was really good for a really long time. And then toward the end of Belichick, the drafting just kind of bottomed out. And then, recently, obviously with Drake May, but a lot of dudes who are contributing to a Super Bowl team. Not all of them are stars. Maybe many of them won't get second contracts, but like you and I talk about this all the time. This is a cheap labor league. You have to have picks that come in and help instantly. We talked about this to death leading up to last year's draft, and then obviously in the immediate aftermath of it. Can you imagine how this past Bengals season would have played out had the players they taken been all able to contribute in a meaningful way? Maybe night and day.
Yeah.
So they nailed the draft this year. And yeah, they hired the right coach and they signed the right free agents, Milton Williams, Stephon Diggs. They've gotten lucky as it relates to the schedule and injuries. But I guess with New England, I start there. I start by, how did they do in the draft this year? How many of those players helped them this season? Pretty much everybody. I also think there's something striking about what can happen to the fortunes of your team when your offensive line takes a major leap. So I think you and I take Pro Football Focus grades with huge grains of salt. But I believe New England last year was ranked 31st in their metrics, this year 11th.
Yeah.
They obviously took an offensive lineman in this year's draft who's had a major impact. But so one of the things I think a lot of us are hoping for the Bengals is, you know what? Perhaps the seeds of that were planted toward the end of the season when in the second half of the year, the offensive line was really starting to play well. If I get an offensive line leap where they go from not bad to really good, then what happens?
Yeah.
And I'll also do this really quick, and then you could react to all of it. I'll take over your podcast for you.
It's fine. I'll be happy with that.
Think of something both these teams did. They did something that I'm sure emotionally had to be really hard. The Seattle Seahawks trading away a franchise icon in Russell Wilson. I'm sure that wasn't easy, but they got the number 9 pick in 2022, the number 5 pick in 2023. That's turned into a starting right tackle in Charles Cross. It's turned into a Devin Witherspoon. They also traded DK Metcalf last year and said, you know what? JSN is going to be our guy. They were willing to do the difficult, unlike what the Bengals did with Trey Hendrickson. Also, the Patriots, before the 2024 season, hired very popular former Patriot Gerard Mayo. And I think it was pretty clear midway through the season, number one, he ain't very good. Number two, Vrabel used to play here. Maybe he would want to coach his old team. Maybe he'd want to coach Drake May. And so there was an obvious replacement, but they just said after 1 year, you know what? Gerard Mayo has meant a lot to this franchise, but we got to go. We got to move on. And so there's the willingness to do the difficult and do things that emotionally I'm sure were not that easy to do, that sometimes I wonder if this franchise here is willing to do.
It's a great point. I think you have to be willing to do things. And I think that they would be willing to do things that would maybe even be considered unpopular or whatever, but too often are afraid or unable to just part ways and move forward and do something like that. It's a great point. The Hendrickson thing is the prime example. And I think we've many times, dialed back so many of last year's problems to the botching of that. I you mentioned free agency a couple of times. They if you look at last year's free agency period, 3 of the top 4 players signed by average annual value are playing this weekend. Sam Darnold being the top, and obviously quarterback's going to be that, and Seattle kind of hitting on that, and Clint Kubiak and all of that went a long, long way to where they're at. But there's 2 other signings that I look at when I'm thinking about the Bengals. That's DeMarcus Lawrence. And Robert Spillane.
Yeah.
Because these are the types of players the Bengals need. DeMarcus Lawrence's age 33 season. He had a great career in Dallas and had an injury. And they were able to sign him for 3 years and $32 million, $11 million per year. Spillane's very, very similar deal. A guy who's super solid, starting level linebacker. Comes in, he's running things, green dot experience. Those are the 2 players. Now, they can be any different type, like it doesn't have to be an older edge or whatever, but like those are the players the Bengals need to be talking about next year. That's the type of signing that they have. Space, position, and a lift all boats type of player that they need. I look at that. If they could go take last year's situation and be signed this year's DeMarcus Lawrence, you'd sign up for it tomorrow. It's perfect for where they're at. If you could go sign Robert Spillane at the same contract and you would do it tomorrow. It's perfect for what they need. I look at those 2 signings, and obviously there just isn't a Milton Williams this year. If there was, you'd love to go for it. But there's not. That's what they need. It's the type of player that doesn't just make their defense better, doesn't just bring a level of serviceability to it. It helps make everybody around them better. It's the setup of where they're at. They need a DeMarcus Lawrence and a Robert Spillane out of this year's free agency.
Yeah, it has. You're right. It has hurt me as I think back to last year's mock-off season with my spreadsheet with Milton Williams on it. It has pained me to watch him help remake that New England front. But yeah, like I think what a lot of people here default to is, well, they're not going to go crazy in free agency. Don't need them to. Like going crazy is overpaying. It's making the splash signing. I need like dudes who can lead, dudes who can set a tone. You and I talked about this last week on the mock off season pod about Bobby Wagner, right? It would be awesome for this franchise if Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter would prove to be quality draft picks. The best way for that to happen is to give them someone to attach themselves to. That they have right in front of them a walking, breathing example of like, here's what I'm supposed to do. Here's what I'm supposed to do between Monday and Saturday. And obviously here's what I'm supposed to do on Sunday. Like players like that, players who fit specific roles. And even if they don't have as much gas in the tank as say a Milton Williams, even if they're not as good, just in terms of quality of player, like I'm looking for the Bengals to do what the Reds did with their bullpen. Yeah. I'm looking for like established guys who fit specific roles, and I go, you know what? I know what that guy can do. They're not sexy, they're not headline grabbing, they're not splashy. Again, we talked about this last week. I'm looking for versions of the players the Bengals acquired in 2020 and 2021. Yeah, and there's a lot of that with these two teams.
I'll say this one other theme that's going to come out of this week, and that I heard, and I always highly recommend the Athletic Football Show, but it's one of my favorite. They do every year. They look at lessons learned from the Super Bowl teams or these Final Four teams, and what you can take from it. And one of those is has the pendulum swung now to where you don't have to start with, hey, give me a top 5 offense and figure the rest out. And is it now the defense is where it's moved to? I think that you can make that assumption by what you're seeing play out on Sunday and obviously a little bit as well last week. I don't think that's permanent. It doesn't, that feels a little bit more like a quick pendulum shift. I think offenses are too smart. I think they're going to start to figure it out. And I also don't think it applies as much to the Bengals because Joe Burrow is not somebody who you've got to go. We all this talk about pure progression passing and dumb it down for the quarterback, and defenses are becoming too complicated pre and post snap. Not worried about that with 9, right? And I think that's a big part of what has changed the dynamic. I think you can build and be comfortable with, hey, sticking with what you are offensively and building it that way. There's nothing that says all of a sudden that's not the path. You'll have teams like that, and you can, and it's probably more about how much you're paying to the quarterback and the money left over to have a well-rounded team than it is anything else, and the Bengals got to figure that out and work around it. But I don't necessarily that doesn't feel as permanent to me of a trend, even though it was obvious for long stretches of time this year, and it will be on Sunday.
Why does it have to be either or? Like, if you ask the general managers of either of these two teams or the head coaches, would you like a top 5 offense? They will say yes. And by the way, the Seattle Seahawks have Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is awesome, and Kenneth Walker, who's very good. And I know he's hurt now, but Zach Charbonnet, and they went and got Cooper Kupp. And the Patriots have a quarterback who's an MVP finalist, and went out and got Stephon Diggs, who's gotten comeback player of the year consideration. Like, I think what I see though is like there's team adaptability. So the Patriots have won playoff games where their offense has been kind of stuck in the mud, right? They adapted to the way the game was played against the Chargers. They found a way to win playoff games where Drake May wasn't at his best. They adapted to the weather better than the Denver Broncos did. Like, so ideally, man, they're scoring a bunch of points against everybody. But my question about the Bengals has always been, can you win a tough game where Burrow plays poorly? Can you win a tough game where the offense the other team has an answer? Can you win a game or be competitive in a game where just there's a bunch of uncharacteristic offensive mistakes? Can you win a game where the weather is so much of a factor that it really grounds your offense? Is there a level of team adaptability there that I think we have seen specifically with New England, but I'm sure we can apply it to the Seattle Seahawks as well. I would love a top 5 offense every single year. The Bengals obviously have the capability of having a top 5 offense every single year. I want to beat teams 49-0, right? I mean, I want to bludgeon teams. I want the backup quarterback to play in the fourth quarter so he can get Pro Bowl consideration. I want a team. It was what stands out to this day. There have been a lot of remembrances of 4 years ago, right? Last week, we had the anniversary of Evan McPherson's kick. And I think of a team that just adapted. Like, all right, man, our offense is not going to be able to fire on all cylinders the way it did at the end of the regular season that year. We have to figure out ways to win and win on the road in a variety of ways, in different ways, in ways that you might not normally, connect with our team. And so there's no world where anybody doesn't want a great offense, but you want to be able to win games when your offense doesn't play like a top 5 offense on that particular day, or the weather doesn't allow you, or the other team's defense just has an answer. And I think specifically with the Patriots, they've tapped into that.
One other thing that is going to be a conversation piece that has started last week, and when we get the official Hall of Fame class announced this week.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Yeah. I kind of said my piece on Who Dey Light. If people want to go back and hear that, a rant that I've done 8 million times. My point of that rant, in case you missed it, was welcome those who are questioning the Hall of Fame voting. We've been saying this forever. Bengals fans are like, yeah, we know. It's terrible and flawed, right? Like, and it has gotten worse recently. And I feel for Ken Anderson. This institution has treated a guy who didn't deserve it like crap. And this is just the latest where suddenly like people are throwing his name around in like some sort of a demeaning manner. A dude who was a 4-time passing title winner and an MVP and one of the great quarterbacks of his generation. And it's just ridiculous what's happened to all of that. You have also had, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to offer your thought on this entire thing, which you have, spelled out nicely on your show. But I was just curious your take for our listeners on this matter.
Halls of Fame are not irrelevant. I went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in the mid-90s when I was in high school, and it was neat. It was fun. I've been to Cooperstown. I love Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. Like in the three sports I care about most, I watch every Hall of Fame induction ceremony because I love watching somebody who has reached the pinnacle of their craft express gratitude to the people who helped them get there. They're often so humbled. They often tell great stories. Like I love them. Even if I have no emotional connection to those athletes, like I love Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. But I think we as fans, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, we've attached too much importance to institutions that we've made out to be sacred. And I think this happens, frankly, a little bit more in baseball than football. But like you hear some of these people talk about a museum in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York, like it's some shrine that's going to give you eternal life. It's a museum. It's a nice museum, but it's a museum that most people are not going to go to in the middle of some small village in the middle of nowhere in New York. When you walk in, there's a bunch of plaques. The plaques are nice, but the museum has a gift shop and overpriced hats and sweatshirts. Like it's a museum. I have decided, let's use Ken Anderson as an example. I want it for him. I want it for Ken and his family because I can't imagine how meaningful it would be to him. I can't imagine how cool it would be for his family to watch him get his moment in Canton where he gets the gold jacket. Dave Parker passed away shortly before he was actually inducted, but it made me so happy that before he passed, he learned he was going to be in Cooperstown. I was thrilled for him because I know what that meant to him, and I know what that meant to his family, and I know what it would mean to Ken Anderson. So I badly wanted for him. As a fan, I don't need it. I know his importance to the team that I root for. I know his significance in NFL history. I know what he accomplished. The 4 passing titles, the MVP, took a team to the Super Bowl for the first time, a Man of the Year award winner. Like, I know what he meant. I don't need, and please don't take this the wrong way, a bunch of football writers and other historians to sign off on it. I don't need their validation. And so I think we've made Halls of Fame out to be so important. It's like if you don't get validated by the people who voted them in, you know, that somehow their career isn't quite, I don't know, validated or fulfilled, whatever the word is. Like I don't. Pete Rose is going to get brought up a lot. We're inching closer to the first time he's ever going to be on the ballot. I do not think he's going to get in. I don't think he's going to come close to getting in. I've stopped caring. I know what he did. I know his significance to the sport. I know his significance to the city. I know what concrete records he holds. By the way, he's no longer with us, so he's not going to get a chance to enjoy that moment. I think we have made these Halls of Fame out to be more important than they actually are. At the end of the day, they're museums with bronze busts and plaques. Some of them have food courts. You can get a bad Subway sandwich at some of them. I was asked on a show on one of our stations over the weekend, like, you know, what's the point of these Halls of Fame even existing? Because they make money, because they're fun places to visit. Like I'm certainly not saying the Hall of Fame shouldn't exist. I just, when it comes to induction and inclusion, I've stopped caring as much as I used to. Because number one, it feels like whenever there's a Hall of Fame result, all it does is elicit anger. God help the people who do get in for the class of 2026, because it's going to be overshadowed by the Belichick thing. And, you know, when things stop becoming fun, I start losing interest, and it feels like Hall of Fame discussions are no longer fun, so I lose interest. But I also, you ever listen to some of these folks who have a ballot talk about, boy, I had the weight of history on my shoulders as I filled out this ballot. It's like, you're not signing someone's death warrant, dude. You're not approving them for a home loan. You're putting a box, checking a box next to their name to determine whether they're going to get a bronze bust that at times doesn't even look like the guy, or a Hall of Fame plaque that usually doesn't look like the guy. So I just, as a fan, I believe we should stop attaching the importance to Hall of Fame inductions that we have.
It matters to these guys, right?
Sure,
And that's
yes.
what it represents, and what it is does matter to these guys. And no, fans don't want to see their guys feel like they didn't get the respect that they deserve and the thing that they want, because they feel like they've given so much to them. And that's important, like to me, that's important. And I think that's why you should fight to have a fair process where just the votes fall where the votes fall. Not whatever they're trying to do now with this, 50, lacking transparency behind the curtain. Guess what? We've made some weird decisions back here while you weren't looking situation, but it matters to those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that is frustrating about what's gone on. That's why I love it. Was about damn time the Ring of Honor happened. And you can have that. Those are there to make up for other halls of fames being stupid. Every organization knows what players really meant to them. And that's why it's great that the names that are up inside of that stadium now are up inside of the Bengals stadium now, because I think that does lessen everybody recognizing the BS that's happened with Ken Anderson's candidacy over time. So that's great. But I think from someone who I've been on the side of having these discussions about votes and heard players talk about it, until it stops mattering to them, it's going to matter. It needs to matter to everybody else, because it does matter to them, and you should want to do as right by them as they can. Now, a lot of players are going to be, Geno Stone's going to be like, how am I not in the Ring of Honor? Right? I was playing my ass off out there. So players are going to have an inflated view, and that's fine.
Sure.
But I think the duty that you hear from people that are voting is one of feeling like I usually talk to Butchie all the time about this on here, and he feels such a responsibility, which he shouldn't. He's doing everything he can to put the word out there, but it shouldn't be on one person to make the case for Willie Anderson and Ken Anderson and Ken Riley over the years. And that shouldn't be have to be a feather in his cap, although it has been the fight that he's been on a crusade to get these guys into the conversation. Because it matters to them is why it matters so much to the voters, and then consequently to the way the votes eventually fall.
Yeah, look, the less transparency there is about anything, the less I start to care.
Yeah.
And what's so ironic about this is we're in this era where so many things in sports have never been more transparent. We know more about how the sausage is made everywhere. The NCAA tournament, the greatest single event in all of American sports, there is a level of transparency with the process that is terrific. And frankly, a lot of it's eliminated some of the Monday grumbling after, because the people who choose the field come out and tell you, here's why we chose who we chose and seeded the teams where we seeded them. Not that there still aren't some arguments about where teams are placed, but in this era where things have never been more transparent, it feels like nobody knows how the Pro Football Hall of Fame operates. But the Ken Anderson thing, okay, here's what I hate about it. If I say the name Ken Anderson, the first thing that pops into anybody's mind is not in Canton. That shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be. Now, that's not Ken's fault, but we have come to allow his Hall of Fame exclusion to this point to define what kind of player he was. If you don't attach that much importance to the Hall of Fame, you won't do that. I want him to get in badly. I want him to get in for Bengals fans. I want him to get in because I've gotten a chance to know Ken over the years, and I think he's just an awesome guy. I've gotten a chance to know his family a tiny bit. I know how much they're rooting for him. I also don't want a Dave Parker situation. I don't want a Ken Riley situation where they go in and they're not there for it, which I think is just heartbreaking. So I want it for him, but you're asking fans to do something that they're not going to do. If you no longer, Joey Votto is going to be on the Baseball Hall of Fame ballot in a few years. I think Joey's a Hall of Famer, best Reds hitter of my lifetime. I'm going to guess he doesn't get in on the first ballot. Maybe he does. I don't need those baseball writers to tell me how good Joey Votto was. I think his Hall of Fame speech would be epic, so I'm rooting for that. But like, I just, in 10 years, if he's not in and somebody says Joey Votto, I'm not going to go, not a Hall of Famer. I'm going to go, you know what? Best hitter I ever watched. Best hitter of my lifetime, at least, in a Reds uniform. Made the team matter. When the team didn't matter, he made him worth watching. One of the most studious players I ever watched. Had a fun sense of humor he showed at the end of his career. Oh, and by the way, he's also in the Hall of Fame. Like, I just... The Ken Anderson thing for me is a primary example because the people who should care most about him start with the one thing he hasn't achieved, which is through no fault of his own. What he did achieve is he was one of the very best players at the most important position in sports for a very long time, took this franchise to a Super Bowl. You mentioned 4-time passing champion, completed over 70% of his passes in an era where nobody completed 60% of their passes, has gone on to do some awesome things, was a coach forever, got a Super Bowl ring as an assistant coach, was a man of the year, called by Mike Brown, the most important player who's ever donned a Bengals uniform. All those things trump whatever a bunch of voters decide to do with him. If he gets in, terrific. If not, I do not need that stamp of approval. I do not need, as a fan, him to get a bust for me to understand his greatness, appreciate what he means, and talk about him in ways that articulate what he was able to accomplish that voters have, at least to this point, overlooked.
In much the same way as the Hall of Fame, I'm not sure what we accomplished here today, but I'm glad that we did it. No. I really like the conversation because I do think you're right though. It's got to be a reframing of people, the way people view it, an understanding of how flawed it is. Maybe that's the good thing that comes out of all of that. Is everyone now very much understands how flawed it is, and maybe it will force them to actually finally change something to try to do right by all of this and maybe expand their voting process.
And so many of the rules just don't make sense. Like, why do we have to have a set number of people get in? Why do we have L.C. Greenwood, Roger Craig, and Ken Anderson all deserving? Why do we have them competing on the same ballot as the most accomplished coach of all time, who just left the sport, just left the league 2 years ago? Like, I mean, articulate that to a 13-year-old, and they're going to go, huh? Like, so I don't know. I sound like I'm really down on halls of fame as institutions, and I'm not. I think we inflate their importance. That's all.
We should just start our own Hall of Fame.
Okay.
We'll just have our Growler podcast, Cincinnati Sports Media Hall of Fame, and we just pick random things. I mean, it's like you could pick Trey Hendrickson for all that he did for your show, right?
Yeah.
And we can just start there, make our own. You guys have some of your own in the iHeart studios.
We have the ESPN 1530 Ring of Honor. Trey Hendrickson, first ballot. Shamar Stewart's already in. Andy Dalton, Joey Votto, Phil Castellini, Mick Cronin. I mean, we have first ballot. The crosstown shootout fight. I mean, we have a Ring of Honor that we that reflects how much we've talked about certain people and topics and how much they've made our jobs easier. So, yes, Ken Anderson might ultimately be an ESPN 1530 Ring of Honor, which I think will supersede anything that may or may not happen in Canton. But I seriously hope Ken gets in. It would be awesome. But if he doesn't, I know how great Ken Anderson was. That's good enough for me.
Well, either way, you are in our personal Ring of Honor
wow,
here,
thanks.
Mo, for all that you bring to the program and the show. And I certainly appreciate your time as always. And we will catch you next week. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, always great chatting and catching up with Mo Egger, who had many thoughts on the Hall of Fame process. And we'll have more on the Super Bowl and more takeaways from that after what we watch and everything next week. Make sure you check in on that. But for now, Charlie, it's time. Off the sheets spin class. Here we go. The wheel is here. I have 10 names on this wheel. I'm not gonna say the names first. Just know they are off the sheets. This is back of the roster stuff. For the YouTubers, I'll let them kind of maybe get a view of some as I go through and give you a look. It's a special premium look there at some of the names that are available to us. I'm going to spin it. And if you've got to take the fire off, do it. I have some as well. And we'll just see how this goes and how many times we decide to do this. Maybe it'll be an hour. Maybe it'll last 3 minutes. I just don't know. All right, here we go. I'm spinning the wheel. We have landed on Noah Fant. He might be the most notable off-the-sheet guy on this wheel. So I'm going to guess that you have a Noah Fant one locked and loaded. What do you got on Noah Fant?
I do. I'm trying to find this specific stat. Here it is. Over the final 7 games of the season, Noah Fant played fewer than 30% of the offensive snaps and caught just 4 passes for 32 yards. There was a quiet phasing out of Fant that in part coincided with the return of Mike Gesicki, but for a team that I think at its soul wants to have a bit more real 12 it can lean into, Noah Fant was kind of phased out of that. And that, to me, even more than fumbles, is why I would mock off season the Bengals going in a different direction, despite some fun times that we had watching Fant with some nice plays.
Oh, the ideas, the dreams that were built in training camp for the tight end screen to Noah Fant that we thought was just going to be a featured element of this offense. And I remember a lot of conversations off the record around practices about, man, we're building something around Noah Fant. Like, this is going to be a thing. And it just, for the first time, and how much of that is due to not having the time on task with Burrow, building that over the course of the season. We've seen that happen with tight ends in the past, but like, it just never came to be. It just never matched up. And you said even more than the fumbles. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say the fumbles. I'm going to say the fumbles are definitely the main reason why he's not going to be back. But the phasing out is right along 1 and 1A, shall we say, in a Jamar and T mode. All right, good start. Good start on Noah Fant thoughts. I like that. Let's go for spin number 2. We have landed on Tyson Anderson, special teams maven, has advanced to maven status during his time in Cincinnati as a free agent. What do you think?
The Von Bell of special teams, something that was so in the weeds that even we didn't talk about it, was Tyson moving from being one of the elite punt gunners in the league to becoming the personal protector on the punt unit. That at the start of 24, they used Jordan Battle in that role. Obviously, Battle was a starter in 2025. They had so much youth and inexperience and unprovenness in the safety room that they said, Tyson, position change. And it's a significant one. And obviously no punts blocked is assigned to Tyson and his obviously standout special teams IQ. And then that versatility is the type of stuff that you need. So he's not a safety. The fact that they never played him until week 18 showed that, but the versatility is enough he is a guy you want on your team, unless the team just kind of overpays him because how much they value that.
I'm really curious to see where he lands. Because we have seen special teams type players get valued and surprisingly stolen from the Bengals in the past. Clayton Fedulum, Ethan Carter are 2 premium examples. But and one that I think we've talked about this before, and that is his value is slightly less because of the changed kickoff, because he was a speed guy, and that's not as valued anymore on the kickoff. Whereas in the past, man, Tyson down there on kickoffs was just an animal. Well, that lessens his output, even though there's more kickoffs because it's not as much based in his skill set. That said, you're right. The punt, all the rest of the special team stuff, he's still a part of all of that and can be a playmaker for you. But what do you do with somebody who you clearly just don't trust to even play safety if you had to? Because it certainly felt like they had to this year and chose not to. He's the 4th safety. Does he want to continue to play somewhere where they don't view him ever as a safety? And I want to know a little bit more what Tyson's perspective is going to be, what his options, low-key fascinating free agency case to track.
Let me put a fine in the jar because I'm about to mention yet again the idea of the slot playmaking hybrid nickel safety combo. I won't talk about that starter type, but to unlock truly the versatility of that player, you need a safety 3 who can kind of soak in the snaps behind them. Like, I'm not expecting Geno Stone back at all, but like, it's just a comp because the Mike McDonald defense is out of my mind. What Geno Stone did in Baltimore was when you needed to move Kyle Hamilton up, you drop Geno in the back half of the field. And obviously that's not Geno Stone and the Bengals in 2026, but you need a safety 3 who can do that if you're really going to have that playmaking slot safety. So you need a safety 3 on the depth chart. That's not Tyson, so you'd need him to be safety 4.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, how the Bengals would approach that in a, you know what, let's get through all the player acquisition stuff, and that will include them signing a safety of some sort. And if Caleb Downs happens to be the guy, then you move into what you're talking about with the star position and 3 safety looks or whatever. But because there's just only so many guys, and I don't really think hardly any in free agency, maybe some, but they're going to be probably overpaid more this year. But as people see the trend of somebody who can do that, who can pull that off. If you have that guy, then you could play it out that way. Another, how they decide to try to make the scheme and personnel and actually acquire a player, because it's so hard to find that guy who can really be dynamic in the Eamon Worry, Kyle Hamilton type mode, is interesting. But there's ripple effects to that, as you pointed, and maybe that is a ripple effect for Tyson Anderson. All right, the wheel is back. Couple good spins. Let's fire another one off. We have landed on.
I'll let you
Eric.
go,
I
Paul.
think, like most Bengals fans, and definitely everyone on the Bengals coaching staff, you root for Eric All. And that's where I've landed on this. Like, I'm not going to sit here and project anything. I think there's hope. Certainly Eric is very positive and hopeful about what it will look like for him. And we've seen what it can look like. It's just, there's such little precedent. It's so hard to know, coming off a double ACL situation, of how much that can hold up. Did we even see it go as far as it can go in his rookie year, midway through his rookie year? The idea of Eric All is game-changing if you could actually promise it. But you just hope. You just hope that he can stay healthy. That you worry that he is I go back to the Rodney Anderson draft pick, 6th round pick, who was like, this guy, have you seen the tape? He's amazing. And when he was healthy, he was, and he went out there and snapped his knee or whatever in the preseason, couldn't get through the preseason. Like, it's just, how solid will this be? But if he comes out of it and there's a lot of confidence and it's working right, and I think you could see them doing what they did in his rookie year, start morphing the offense around his skill set, because the NFL has shifted to Eric All's strength. Like, all of these 12 personnel, 13 personnel packages are based around featuring dudes like Eric All that can do both so well. And they were just starting to see that. So if his knee can hold up and he's still the same guy, it's mesmerizing to think about. But you just can't count on any of that right now. It's so unsure. And so I hope for him that he is okay.
The idea of Eric All will be the sequel to my debut novel, The Idea of Jermaine Burton, which hits stores sometime. Eric All, the most like an OTAs guy, like a sneaky, interesting, like, all right, can this guy move? How is he running? Like, some real evaluation that we get to do. I think he'll be the most interesting guy on the offense in training camp, because it'll all be the same. But this is a potential piece that obviously wasn't in the mix in 2025, who has the ceiling to play 70% of your snaps and the floor of playing 0 snaps. I do know, talking to Eric late in the year last year that he expects this to be a quote. I mean, you can't call it a normal offseason, but like a real offseason, which he wasn't able to have. I'm bad on the timeline, but I believe after 2023 because of the back, and 2024 because of the knee, and then obviously in 2025 the knee again, he's never had like an off season in a long time. And so I know he had some very, very specific things and people he planned to do and work with and train to build up specific traits and abilities, and he has a plan. He just needs to hold up, and if he does hold up, that'll be very interesting to monitor kind of on a daily basis in camp.
Boy, could be one hell of a dynamic for an offense that already has a ton of weapons. All right. That was a fun. We've hit some good ones right off the jump here. Let's keep it rolling. Here we go. Another spin. We have landed on a Charlie Goldsmith favorite, Cam Sample. Cam Sample. What do you got on Cam?
There's a little Cam Sample in all of us. Do you ever feel, I don't feel underappreciated here at the Growler, but do you, the listener, ever feel underappreciated at work? Do you feel like you show up and it's the same grind, wondering if anyone notices? Look at Cam Sample. You should have a Cam, like a motivational cat poster. Like there should be a motivational Cam Sample poster as a Bengal cat, because Cam Sample has shown up for 6 years and gotten zero credit and done a solid enough job at being a defensive head 5 in your room. You forget that he was playing closing snaps on the Bengals' run to the Super Bowl in 2021. And I think the ship has sailed on him being any sort of impact, or really any sort of pass rusher, even though shout out to his 2 sacks against Shedeur Sanders. But having a guy who can set the edge and will hit a tackle in the face and do all of your dirty work, who then has also the versatility to, in a pinch, not ideal, but in a pinch, kick inside and help with your, I believe they call that horizontal depth in that way. The league needs Cam Samples. And there's a lesson in that for us all.
I've always been told that, coincidentally, Cam Sample was the Drew Sample of defense, and that underappreciated, does everything up and down the line. Whatever you need him to do to try to fill a spot and play a role, he does it, and does it solidly. He's not spectacular. He's not going to make headlines. But yes, underappreciated.
And don't ask him to drop back in coverage, ever.
No, really don't. Why was that happening? I would like to see that poster behind you, and you got some wall space behind you, Charlie. I think the Cam Sample Tiger poster that you described would look lovely behind you.
It's him taking on like a block from like Lane Johnson, and it's like, hang in there.
You could Cam Sample career salary $5.5 million. Tough to argue. You know what I mean? Made coin in the league. Can't hate on it. All right, back to the wheel. Let's go. This spin class has been delightfully informative. Here we go. We have landed on, we're not going to do Noah Fan again as much as we'd like to. This is where it gets harder. We got hits. Oh, Charles Sizzle.
Fun one.
Yes. Charlie Jones, what do you got?
We've talked about the way the league has changed, right? Here we go again, finding the jar, Nick Eamon, safety star, whatever. Well, that's changed the slot position. And like a perfect example is when the Bengals drafted Yosivas, no one expected him to be a slot receiver, but now that power slot is kind of how the league looks. And the way that the league has trended in the slot has phased out your Charlie Jones straight line vertical speed, but honestly no power element to him, has kind of phased those slot receivers out of the league. So even the way the league has just changed since the start of the 2023 season has led to you going away from Charlie Jones, who I'm sure will make some more plays in training camp this year on the outside, because that's what he always does. But because of the way the league has changed and because he hadn't quite added that power element, I'm not counting on him being a contributor outside of the return game. However, I wish there were some way to get some yak screen element involved with the receiver not named Jamar, but here we are 3 years in, and there's still no signs of that happening with Charlie Jones.
I don't think he makes it. and that's
It's
my
a fair take. Yeah.
I think that what Keyshawn Williams did, I mean, when he came in and you saw that juice just from a guy that they pulled off the street, and maybe he's the guy that ousts Charlie Jones. That's his direct competition. And Charlie, respect. I mean, he has return touchdowns 3 straight years. Nobody else can say that the last 3 years. And so he's certainly good at that. And that's not, you're not hating on those particular results and hitting the explosives, but like, man, you felt a little extra when Williams was in there. And if Charlie Jones isn't bringing you anything as a receiver right now, and I'm going to think that they'll probably have another receiver in the mix beyond Yoshi and Gesicki. Obviously, we know Mitch Tinsley is next up as well. If there's another day 3 draft pick, or some player who's added who brings them some return juice, or just Williams again, what do you do here? It's the Office Space line, right? Like, what would you say you're doing here right now if they feel like they go a different way? Because I think they know who he is as a returner, and we saw a little different element come when they brought in Keyshawn in the second half of the season. So I don't know, man. I think he's got an uphill battle in a lot of ways, even though he's more tenured than the rest.
I wonder if there's a bit of and here's actually the final in the trilogy of this series of books I'm writing. The final in the trilogy will be The Ghost of Isaiah Williams. Jets MVP. I wonder if there's a bit of regret there in someone who you saw, and Charlie obviously is a good returner, but he doesn't quite have that running back juice in a way that like almost like a suddenness in really quick areas, in really small areas, which is essential, especially on kick return nowadays and punt return as well, with how small the windows are. You let the guy with that out the door to keep building up Charlie Jones, keep developing him. But obviously you let an impact style of returner leave. Do you risk making that mistake again?
Darren Simmons used to reference this with Pac-Man, a guy who puts the fear of God in you when you're kicking to him, not like at a bar at 2 a.m., but like on the field. Pac-Man, you were scared to kick to this guy. He had that, and the way he could immediately move in those small spaces was untouched, right? Like, it was unparalleled to what you've seen. You're not going to have another Pac-Man's athletic ability show up, right? Like, that's very rare, but something like that is what they're constantly looking for. And I think they found a little bit of that in Williams, and that's just not necessarily who Charlie Jones is as a returner. He's had the big ones, but that's not necessarily his game. All right, let's spin it again. Are you getting bored yet?
I live for this, Paul.
Let's spin it. We have landed on Cam Sample again. We keep it Is that Sean Clifford entering the chat? Go ahead, Charlie. What's your thoughts on Sean Clifford?
Sean Clifford is going to have a day in OTAs on the day where Joe Burrow is off at the Met Gala. When Burrow's away, Clifford going to QB2 will be the headlines, and no, but that'll be a fun talking point at the time. Sean Clifford, keep in mind, there's a lesson with Sean. He fits the archetype of the style of backup quarterback they look for. Over 3,000 passing yards in high school and 27 touchdown passes. At Penn State, he had 2 different seasons of 2,800 passing yards or more. I don't expect Clifford to be the backup at all, despite the great success he's going to have in one June practice while Burrow's wearing a suit. But remember, consult your high school and college stats and completion percentages before you make any mock off-season backup quarterback predictions.
Oh, big vibes guy. And that's what it's about. Third QB's got to be a vibes guy. Culture hire, some might say.
I'd like to think I'd be like Sean Clifford if I had enough athletic talent to make it into an NFL building.
Yeah, you'd have to be able to run the scout team in this particular situation, or find a different place. Haven't we discussed? Wouldn't you be a tight end? I think we've discussed this.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Great Clifford take. We're rolling on. we have landed on. We've done all of those. We're getting through it pretty well here, actually. Brian Asamoah, mid-season edition. I believe you coined him the Joe Flacco of special teams.
Special teams Flacco. That's right.
Special teams Flacco. All right. What are your thoughts on Brian Asamoah?
In an off season where the Bengals need help at linebacker, where what they already have is really young, do they still commit linebacker 5 to just a special teams guy? You're not expecting Asamoah to help at linebacker, but like, for example, I ended up cutting Oren Burks in my mock off season, but like, do you keep Burks as LB5 because he gives you enough on special teams, but like also, while he's not a starter, like he could play, and roll your eyes, like he's known as one of the best fourth linebackers in the NFL, and that's not a compliment, but that's how he's viewed. Or does your fifth linebacker spot just have to be a special teams guy? The problem for Asamoah is the Bengals are sneakily stacked with Shaka Harris and Joe Giles Harris, Shaka Hayward and Joe Giles Harris, two guys who have really done stuff when they've been given an opportunity in a special teams minded role.
Yeah, but I think there's still a place for that, and I don't know. I mean, is he going to be able to latch on somewhere else? He certainly feels to me like a guy who's here in camp, right? I mean, I think he's here. Sure. I think he hangs around. I think he competes. I think you notice him when he is here in camp. I mean, that's his OTAs, his time to shine, right? But like, and I think he'll certainly be a discussion. We'll be sitting here on cut down day and his name will come up. Is my prediction.
He's a former third round pick. He looks like a linebacker, and obviously he's got the IQ to come in and play special teams on 2 days notice.
He does. All right, let's do one more. And then we can wrap it up. See if we can finish off strong here with what better place to end than Marco Wilson? Because Marco Wilson Tuesday is almost here. We're only about 5 weeks away from Marco Wilson Tuesday, the defining day of the Bengals season last year. What you got?
I debated in December asking basically booking Marco for Marco Wilson Tuesday this year. But to me, that felt a little disrespectful because the bit of the joke is that you're only signing a 6 cornerback. Sneakily, like a guy have it, huge need for the Bengals is any corner on their bench who can cover in any capacity out wide. Because obviously they've got their cornerstones locked down. They've got DJ Ivey, who I'm a huge DJ Ivey guy, never allowed a third down catch to it, or really any first down catch to a tight end. But he's not in his role, as they like to say. He's not an outside cover guy. Josh Newton, I think at best can only play the slot, not an outside cover guy. And Braylon Lux and Jalen Kimber, that's it. They don't have, and it's just like starting pitchers. Corners get hurt every year. You need that depth. They don't have a single outside guy on your bench who you'd really trust. They did trust Marco. Now, he never really got a chance to do anything because of the injury, the poorly timed injury in 2025. But whether it's bringing him back, I know he has fans in that building, or a style of that player in the draft or free agency, like they've got to have something like that in 2026 on their depth chart.
I like to drop gifts for people that stick around this late into a podcast. I think a really fun conversation that I'll open up right now that we're going to have a lot, and my early feel on this is I'm not against a corner at 10. And for this reason, what you just said, one, and if that's the best player, if we're talking, and there's a chance that if the edges go early and you're standing there and there's, the next in line on most people's boards right now is this sort of small collection of corners. If you're of the mind that you're getting the best cornerback in this draft and you can come away at 10 and say, I'm giving that to my defense, you can find places for that guy to play. I don't know what it would mean for a guy like Dax Hill.
Poor guy.
Right. Like, can he catch a break there if that is the case? But if you're truly in a BPA, you're going to have to take that into consideration. It's a premium position. You always need guys there. And you can sit here and say Dax and DJ are going to be the corners for the next 3-4 years, but you don't know that for sure. And health is not always going to pan itself out there. And you can't, thinking positionally is what gets you into trouble in the top 10. And so if you're just going into a vacuum and not thinking about the rest, and I think you can do that with the 10th pick in a draft that doesn't necessarily have a bunch of blue chip guys, I wouldn't hate corner. It wouldn't be at the top of my list. It would lose a tiebreaker to other positions. But if the player is the player and he's a level better than everybody else, he just happens to play corner, I don't hate it. And I think that's going to be a topic we end up talking about a lot as we get within the last couple of weeks of the draft.
Having the opportunity to select a corner is a position that the best operating teams in the NFL would put themselves in. The Bengals can put themselves in that position by getting some long-term clarity with Dax Hill and DJ Turner before the draft, something they haven't done any of during this window, and by addressing all of their starting needs in free agency, something they haven't done since 2022. Like, they went into the draft this past year needing a starting pass rushing defensive tackle. Whoops, they didn't get it. A linebacker, they reached for Knight. A guard, they picked Fairchild. Good job. And then all these other things as well, including like they never got a third safety. Like, the way they froze on Marco Wilson Tuesday prevented them from taking the best player available in this type of situation. So if they eat their veggies and do the right things and be proactive enough before the draft, then congratulations, you can do something that smart teams around the league do and put yourself in position to draft a pick to draft a first round pick at a quote unquote luxury depth upside position like corner.
Yeah. Stack good players, find great players, and there'll be conversations to be had. And you're probably in a world where if that's where you're looking, there's probably one of the tackles available, and you probably would like them, and it would obviously make a ton more sense than corner if you were in a tiebreaker situation. But again, I just think it's going to be an interesting topic because there are these corners that are going to be right around that area available probably, and an interesting conversation. Charlie, this was great. We should use the wheel for obscure topics more often. I'm pro wheel. I enjoyed it. You were, of course, thoroughly prepared for it. I'm sad we didn't get to Cordell Volson because Bring him back. Cordell should want to be back. The Bengals should want him back. He's going to sign for the league minimum somewhere anyway. 1 year league minimum. Is there a dramatic difference between Cordell Volson and Dalton Reisner's careers, right? Like, bounced around, good moments here and there. Like, yeah, Reisner is certainly a better player in a better spot right now, but could Cordell Volson turn his career into Dalton Reisner? Sure.
What's sad,
in the right place?
What's sad is, and obviously Cordell's a guy who they benched when they could in 24, and they were planning to be a backup this year. But Cordell Volson right now, give me that resume over the resume that Lucas Patrick had entering 2025 when the Bengals signed him to be their starting right guard. So yes, we've seen the Bengals do crazier things than sign Cordell Volson to start. Well, obviously that wouldn't be my plan. I'd love to have him as your 8th or 9th guy in the room. I believe in the person, and I think he's got enough physical force to be a part of your depth.
Totally agree. And obviously it seemed like he was a match with Peters. They were kind of Peters being there was the reason for hope for Cordell, the reason he came back on the restructured deal anyway, and all of that stuff. So perhaps there's hope. See, extra bonus take for people. We're just givers here as we get deep. I mean, for a podcast where we spent some time talking about tabs and files, to make it this far in, to have this long of a podcast on February 3rd. I mean, what else do you want, Bengals fans? We're filling the space. Let's go. Not even a Super Bowl prediction to be found. You don't need it because we're too deep in the Bengals weeds. We're spinning wheels talking about Sean Clifford.
We had a real coherent take about Sean Clifford.
We did. We did. It happened. All right. Reminder. Plenty more stuff coming your way. Go subscribe. Tell your friends. This is the year to get on the Power Stacks rocket ship. It's happening. Check Charlie and Brian Giesenslaw out on that. Charlie's going to be out there for the arrival week next week, spring training, working the backfields, all the information you could want on that. We've got everything going on. Free agency's coming up. We've got some fun stuff planned for the draft and free agency season. Who Dey Light later this week. That's not stopping. All the stuff you come to love, we've got it. So make sure you're subscribed, getting the alerts. Give us those good ratings. They're always helpful to get more people directed to us. And thank you to everyone that has stuck around this far into this podcast. I hope you feel like these extra little nuggets we gave you were a solid morsel of reward, a little ice cream at the end, because you ate your veggies by getting through the first hour and 20 minutes to it. So thanks to everybody for listening and for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.